Welcome to Sunday School. 1 Corinthians 10:4, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Exodus 20, verse 3, thou shalt have no other gods before me. While the Israelites were journeying through the desert, they had great trouble from want of water. Between the wells of Elim and Mount Sinai, they found no streams nor springs. Their sheep and men suffered from thirst, and little children were crying for water. The people came to Moses and said in great anger, "Give us water, or we shall die. Why have you brought us up from Egypt to kill us here in the desert?" And Moses called on God and said, "Lord, what shall I do to this people? They are almost ready to stone me in their anger. How can I give them water?" Then God told Moses what to do, and this is what Moses did. He brought the people together before a great rock, and with his rod he struck the rock. Then out of the rock came forth a stream of water, which ran like a little river through the camp, and gave them plenty of water for themselves and for their flocks. While they were in camp around this rock at Rephidim, the wild people who had their homes in the desert and were called the Amalekites made sudden war on the Israelites. They came down upon them from the mountains while they were weary with marching, and killed some of the Israelites. Then Moses called out those of the people who were fit for war, and made a young man named Joshua their leader, and they fought a battle with the Amalekites. While they were fighting, Moses stood on a rock where all could see him, and prayed the Lord God to help his people. His hands were stretched out toward heaven, and while Moses' hands were reaching up, the Israelites were strong and drove back the enemy. But when Moses' arms fell down, then the enemy drove back the men of Israel. So Aaron, Moses' brother, and Hur, who is thought to have been Moses' brother-in-law, the husband of his sister Miriam, stood beside Moses and held up his hands until the Israelites won the victory and overcame the men of Amalek. In the 3rd month after the Israelites had left the land of Egypt, they came to a great mountain which rises straight up from the plain. This was Mount Sinai, where Moses saw the burning bush and heard God's voice. The Israelites made their camp in front of the Mount Sinai and stayed there for many days. And God said to Moses, "Let none of the people go up on the mount or come near to touch it. If even one of your cattle or sheep shall touch the mountain, it must be killed. This is a holy place where God will show his glory." And a few days after this, the people heard the voices of many trumpets sounding on the top of the mountain. They looked and saw that the mountain was covered with clouds and smoke, and lightnings were flashing from it, while thunder rolled and crashed, and the mountain shook and trembled. The people came out of their tents and stood far off, trembling with fear. Then God spoke in the hearing of all the people as with a voice of thunder, and said, "I am the Lord thy God, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage." And then God spoke to all the people the words of the 10 Commandments, to which you have listened many times. In a shorter form, with explanations where necessary, the 10 Commandments are these. 1. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. That is, God is our supreme ruler. 2. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. That is, thou shalt not worship idols. 3. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. That is, thou shalt not use the name of God profanely. 4. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 5. Honor thy father and thy mother. 6. Thou shalt not kill. That is, thou shalt not take the life of any person. 7. Thou shalt not commit adultery. That is, thou shalt not be unfaithful to husband or wife. 8. Thou shalt not steal. 9. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. That is, thou shalt not tell a lie about anyone. 10. Thou shalt not covet. That is, thou shalt not desire other people's possessions. And all the people heard these words spoken by the Lord God, and they saw the mountain smoking and lightning flashing, and they were frightened. They said to Moses, "Let not God speak to us any more, for the sound of his voice will take away our lives. Let God speak to you, Moses, and do you speak to us God's words." "Fear not," said Moses, "for God has come to you to speak with you, that you may fear him and do his will." Then God called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up, and with him was his helper, the young man Joshua. Joshua stayed on the side of the mountain, But Moses went up alone to the top among the clouds. And there Moses stayed upon the mountain alone with God for 40 days, talking with God and listening to the words which God spoke to him, the laws for the people of Israel to obey. And God gave to Moses 2 flat tablets of stone upon which God had written with his own hand the 10 Commandments.